Terry, and with me today is my great friend and colleague, Allan Parker.
Great to be here.
We decided, didn't we, Allan, to have a conversation about conversations.
Yes, yes. And if I may say, I think it's an overdue conversation, do you?
Indeed. Indeed. I've reflected on, just the other day, I was looking at, you've got a number of magic word
the magic word videos
out there, and I had a bit of a look at them again the other day, and I thought, well, this is just this is one of the keys, isn't it? How little words, small things make a significant difference.
Yes, yes. And in fact, just so you know, I've got a permanent flip chart here just at my side with about 12 of them if you need to refer to them later.
Well, there you go. Yeah. That would be good.
Yeah. And they are what I call my tiny choice points, or critical choice points, or critical turning points. And they're little words with pauses that shift the thinking at any critical moment in time.
Yes, yes. One of my favorites, and I use this a lot, Allan, is so.
I've got to pull the chart down just to let you know. As usual, you and I are on a similar plane because the first one on my chart is so.
There you go. I think, as you know, I had some health challenges. Some of them are ongoing, but one of the things I had to do 10 years ago was stop flying. My doctor said, you've got to stop flying if you want to have a long life.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, at that particular juncture, I was flying every week.
Yes.
So anyway, long story short, I think you know, I made the decision. I'm going to stop getting on planes and presenting to big groups, and I'm going to go online and talk to smaller groups.
Right.
And it was a strategy for my health, really, at the start. I didn't know it was going to open the door to the most fascinating decade of my whole career.
We never really know what those turning points are, do we?
No, no. I still enjoy presenting to, bigger groups, but I tell you, my heart and soul these days is in the room with 9 or 10, 7 or 8, even 3 or 4.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've learned is that when you've got really compassionate, conscious people in the room with you, a conversation can go, and then there's a pause, a natural pause, and that's when I've got used to saying so. And then, of course, that magic pause that you are such a master of, and then you might lead it, segue it, ask a question. There's so many options, isn't there, to go from that one little tiny word and the magic pause.
Yeah. And I think it's an unappreciated art, Ian, is the simple art of conversation.
There's no doubt, even though we're hardwired as human beings to have conversations.
Yeah. And you know me, I'm a crazy, negotiator first and foremost is how I earn my living. But I'm in my heart, I'm a microbehavioral neuroscientist, and a crazy, eccentric one at that. But if I look back, and I suspect yours is similar, if I look back at the major projects of my career, it was problems that were existing or opportunities that were available that weren't being activated, that were to do with either a culture that wasn't encouraging of conversation, or conversations that weren't happening, or conversations people didn't feel safe enough to step into. and conversations who people, if they did step into, they weren't concerned about what had happened afterwards as a consequence.
You've no doubt seen this. Meetings have taken over conversations, or meetings have stopped allowing conversations, or meetings are the substitute for conversations.
Let me be, can I be Allan Parker and naughty and critical of meetings have become the boring, most predictable process that prevent quality conversations from taking place.
Yep, you have no argument for me. Once upon a time, I used to get called in. I'd have the executive or whatever who I was working for would say to me, "Look, can you go? There's something wrong with our meetings. Can you go and sit in and come back and tell me about them?" And that was I don't know, it was a regular gig for quite some time with a whole lot of different organisations, and I used to sit on the side initially, and if I got invited into the actual circle, then well and good. But I used to sit on the side. And often in the first 2 or 3 minutes, I'd be putting my hand up, and the question would be, my question, what is the purpose of this meeting? I'm not sure. And I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Somebody called a meeting, it's got a lot to do with their ego. I found over long years of studying this, instead of, and this is where the change, I guess, came for me when I started having conversations with small groups, and rather than presenting to big groups, I started calling them human being centered conversations.
Yeah.
And I said to the early groups, I think this is about being human.
Yeah.
It's about being the best humans that we can be.
Yeah.
And that means, by definition, eliminating anything that's not good for humans. And of course, very early on, meetings came up. Let's eliminate meetings because they're not good for humans. And the difference between conversations and meetings, of course, came up. And over time, the first one that I came up with 10 years ago was conversations are candid.
Right.
They've got to be candid.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you know, most meetings aren't.
Yeah.
And I soon realized, though, that not everyone was up for candid, and so I added, I added convivial.
Oh, good.
Because I think at the heart of a great conversation, there is candor, but there's got to be conviviality as well.
Yeah.
And soon the groups I was working with in those early days, to keep it human being centered, we added compassionate to the candid convivial equation. And then over time, we added conscious and compelling.
Oh, lovely.
So it became these 5 criteria for a good human being centered conversation. Became these 5. And we have added some components over the, I've got 5 or 6 people now. In fact, you've joined one of these groups. Just you'll meet a couple of these people who've been in the room for the decade. Yes. Yeah. And so we've added, because it became very clear in the early days, and I'll be fascinated, but I think I know your thoughts, but I'll be fascinated to hear them. We added storytelling as a feature of a good conversation.
Yeah.
Because without a story, how can the conversation begin? That was
and
that's now a key thrust. I mean, Allan, you're inspiring me to get on the whiteboard here.
Storytelling. Can I just check in? I got candid, I got conscious, I got convivial.
So compassionate and compelling.
what a great combination.
They have proven to be powerful. You know, candid wasn't enough, and I found it even in my own style. You know, I was I'm still very interactive as a presenter.
Yes.
But I kind of, for a number of years, I was hired because I was candid.
Yes, yes. Ian, you and I are very different, but similar in so many ways. I think I have a history of clients, very long term, who engage me because when necessary, I'm very candid. And I have an equal number of clients who didn't continue to work with me because I was at times candid.
Yes, I know that story. Well, look, I by nature, some people say you soften a bit as you get older. I think it was more about, I wanted to be myself as a host of conversations. I wanted to be the best role model I could be.
Right.
And I know that as soon as I added conviviality to the conversation, it changed things.
It does. Yeah.
Now, candid was still a bedrock.
Yep.
But being convivial and having fun with it, and often that's where your wonderful little words come in. I see given, which is another one of my favorites.
Yes. Ian, given all that, now I can have you hold your attention there and pause whenever I look intelligent and move my mouth and look out the window as if I'm thinking. And it's given me time to go, holy shit, what do I say?
Well, you know what we've come to value in our regular peer groups and in the We Need to Talk program that I host, we've come to value silence.
Yes.
It's another classical piece of a human being centered conversation, because there is moments when there's no need to talk.
Yep.
And sometimes the silence can go on for quite some time. And yet what I've noticed, when people get comfortable with it and sit with it, the first person to speak is precisely the person who needs to speak.
Yes.
And what comes out of their mouths is profound.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And so, you know, I've got used to this idea, I'm sure you have too. I often just sit back and I might even say, so given what we're talking about,
yes,
and then I'll roll back in the chair a bit like this and just wait.
Yep. Yep.
Because we humans, we've got used to talking.
Mm.
I think we're still getting used to listening.
Yes. I think that's a very important distinction.
I put my hand up myself, you know.
Very important distinction. Yeah.
My wife of 49 years still reckons I could be a better listener. I admit, but I think it's, you know, like we're all a work in progress.
Yes, I love WIP.
Yep. And I noticed it's one of your words down there, improved progress on your on your list.
It's just a constant process of improving and improving and making progress. And picking up on one of the key words you talked about earlier when you referred to making change and the resistance to change. I think the world is calling out for another replacement word for the word change, because we've seen so much of it for the sake of change, and we've been so much of it by whatever, you know, I'm going to be critical again here. Gosh, am I getting a cranky old man here? Is it the latest article in the Harvard Business Review? And or have I just become the new CEO and I've taken a month to review the scenario and now I'm going to change it to my model of the world? And we have change happening as a habituated process instead of us stopping and looking and pausing long enough and exploring and having conversation about what would change, what would make progress, and how could we improve what's going on.
And sadly, you know, progress perhaps is a tainted word in some ways as well,
Yes.
because it's got political, it's been caught up in political nonsense.
Yeah.
I think one of the great challenges we face today is we have change fatigue big time. We've also got still, you know, this idea of change management. I mean, to me, it's the great oxymoron.
Yes.
You know, maybe people management and strategic planning are two that might rival change management,
Yes.
but they're oxymorons.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I reckon I'm encouraged, because at the same time, we've got all this change resistance, change fatigue. I agree. We need to change the word.
Yes. Yeah.
Because at the same time, it's a great juxtaposition in many ways, because at the same time, we've got a huge awakening to, you know, what the quantum physicists have been telling us for 30 years, I suppose, that we live in a world of infinite possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything's interconnected. Yeah.
And, you know, the science has been proving this for, you know, a generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm seeing more and more people now open to possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think shifts in, because after all, at the heart of what we're talking about, conversations between humans, language is at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
And language either uplifts us or pulls us down.
Yeah.
And change is one of those words. I'm with you. It pulls us down.
Yeah, I think it's. I think it is. I'm fighting an urge to draw a diagram. We talk about change as if it's a one thing, and we talk about it as if we can manage it. And there are parts of change that we don't want to manage because it's developing the way it needs to develop.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think it's become overused, it's become over fashionable. And the fact that we have a change management department or project instead of managing the project.
Yeah, I mean, to me, change has always been about process, but even that now is a word that, you know, doesn't necessarily inspire people.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you got any inkling about what a different word might be?
Oh,
apart from
now you mention it. Can I put those? Ian, just if I may, and there's one of those words that allow us to pause, have a minute to go, will I do this or will I do that? And I'm sure you've seen me do this at some point in time, that I talk about every human interaction is juggling three balls. And the three balls are, how do we juggle the what? And a lot of people will call it the content. How do we juggle the how, which people call strategy or process? And in some areas now, strategy just means the task I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So we've bastardized the word strategy and we've bastardized the word process, and it just simply means how and how else.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, right at the beginning of this discussion, if I get the relationship right, and I've got a good how, and I've got good rapport, the what will usually take care of itself.
Yep.
And if once I get those three things going, I have a sneaking suspicion then that if I give my mental and physical attention, my emotional attention to how, to what, and to who or whom, there's this magic outer circle that turns up called deep needs.
Called
Deep needs.
Yep. Yep. Wonderful.
And that the more we attend to the process and invent new hows, but have conversations about them before we. So I think the greatest mistake to the world of negotiating is we decide before we discuss. And if each time we got a good idea, I could go, I'm going to run that past Ian and see what he thinks. And actually listen to your response. And if you burst my bubble and go, Alan, you got any idea what will happen if you do that?
Well, I'm going to just raise my desk a little bit so that I can use the whiteboard here.
Oh, good.
Because I've just had an inspiration by what you've been saying.
Right.
And that is that my suggestions at the minute for, rather than change, let's call it continuous conversation. And I've got an urge to say continuous conversation that, and it's that I'm looking for. Because rather than change, we're looking at, it's probably a little hard to read that, Red, is it?
That's all right. I've got it in my mind.
I've just misplaced the magic pens, Alan. Continuous conversation. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It kind of never ends, and you can. It's
yes.
like, you know, when you and I and Carol, my wife, met recently in Geelong by happenstance.
Yes. Yes.
It was like we picked up the conversation like we've never left.
Indeed. Indeed.
And that's the human connection, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we haven't arrived, this is why your process that you've drawn there for me, it's like we've never arrived. We've got this continuum.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So there's something about the idea that I'm going to sit back down again, Alan, because as you know, I'm still a little fragile post-COVID.
Right.
I know you are. I know you've been on the journey as well, but yeah, there's something about this idea that it's a continuum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a circle.
Continuous conversation, pause, that is what I call the pause and the that is what I call a door opener.
Yes. Yep.
It's when I go, and I think it's the continuation of the conversation that you're talking about. That, now if I pause at that, your speculative brain comes up with ends to the sentence. In forensic linguistics, we look at studying what's the omission or the hidden agenda or what's not being said. and we look for subjects that are not objects and not objects. So the sentence has got a subject, but the sentence doesn't have an object. Continuous conversation is a subject. That is the link to the object, and the need of the individual is nearly always in the object. That's me being boringly linguistically theoretical.
No, I think it's marvelous though, because the outer circle, it has this connotations for me. Of course, the indigenous folk, the native folk have known this for, well, at least 65,000 years, and probably a 250,000 years, probably.
Yes.
As within, so without.
Yeah.
So you've got this wonderful description of the how, the what, and the relationships. That's the within. They lead to the without.
Yes.
The needs.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's continuous conversation that meets the objective needs of people.
Yeah. Ian, from your experience, what are the characteristics that you see in those rich conversations that are learnable, teachable, and replicable?
It's a massive question.
Yeah.
I think there are a number, but I'll start with what I think are a big three.
Yeah.
And that is honesty,
yeah,
vulnerability, and accountability.
Oh, nice.
I think they go together. I've been inspired, like many others, of the work of Brené Brown.
Yeah.
In her most recent work, Atlas of the Heart, she looks at, I think, 86 emotions.
I was just seeing if I could pull it off my bookshelf.
It's a wonderful read.
Yeah, it is.
But I think what emerges over time, and it comes back to one of your, I would say the key inner circle is relationships.
Yeah.
And of course, if we have language that is enriching the relationship,
yeah,
then we're able to have this conversation that leads to some form of objectivity.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think underpinning relationships, whether they're personal, business, or community, or whatever kind of relationship they are, I think honesty / integrity,
yeah,
vulnerability, accountability underpin the best relationships.
Yeah.
And the evidence in the conversations that I'm having every week in the peer groups, but also the regular We Need to Talk episodes, that there is an underpinning of these three things. There's an honesty that's born out of the relationships, and those relationships have been elevated by the language.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what becomes clear in the storytelling component of the conversation is there's a vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah.
But equally, in the conversations that follow the stories, I'm seeing a desire at a truly deep human level for people who want to be accountable.
Yeah.
Now, people actually want to be accountable.
Talk to me about accountability. I hear that in the business world used so often, and I'm always searching for. I'm an empirical scientist and a linguist. I'm a pain in the butt. But when somebody says to me accountability, particularly in the business world that I work in, I have to say to you, in the sentences that's being used or the context it's used, I often don't have any idea what they're talking about that they want to see happening that would allow them to say that's accountability.
It is a difficult word, and it probably fits into this a bit like change. We need a new word.
Yeah, yeah.
But but for now, it's, you know, where does the ultimate decision lie?
Yeah, right.
It's like in the groups that I'm a part of, we talk about at the end what will be the stay, stop. We call them stay, stop, shift.
Yeah, yeah.
And we talk about behavior change, or we talk about a nuancing, or we talk about some form of modification of who we are and what we're doing. And we say, well, who's accountable for that? And someone's got to say, well, I will do this. I will do this. And so we're used to, in our groups, you know, we have what we call performance possibility partners. So if someone says, I'm going to modify this about myself, or I'm going to change this behavior about myself, somebody else in the room will hold that person to account.
And what does that mean?
It means checking in with that person to see how they're going with what they promised. So I agree, accountability is a tricky word, and it probably, and you've sent me off down a rabbit hole, Alan. Thank you very much. I'm now going to go on a quest to find a word that replaces accountability, because it is a confusing one.
It may be a rabbit hole for you, but it's a rich one for me.
I'm agreeing it's a rich rabbit hole.
Accountable means that I claim the willingness to do, is what I wrote.
I claim the willingness to do. Wonderful.
And then I join with my performance possibility partner. And I wrote, who'll check in with me.
Yes. Yes, one of the conversations that count, we'll explore these another time, but I think there are at least 15 conversations that count.
Yeah.
And one of them is the check-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I've got a performance possibility partner and we're checking in once a week, say,
yeah,
and we've got a solid relationship, and I say to you, Alan, look, last week you promised you were going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And from what you're saying, you haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Is there something I can help you with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you say, well, I just been procrastinating. I haven't got around to it. And I might then use one of your wonderful little words that will inspire you to actually do what you said you would.
Yes.
And I might say, so I'm wondering.
Nice.
If you were to approach it in this way, what would happen?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think we want to be people of integrity. You know, we want to do what we say we will.
Yeah.
But we've perhaps got into, you mentioned it, maybe it was when we weren't recording, but you talked about it's an habitual rather than a conscious living. And I think that's where a lot of us have reached in our lives. We've become habitual, not conscious.
Yeah. I think I often say, Ian, we're in habitual autopilot. And the way most people describe that is, and I would say 50% of people I ask how they are, they say busy.
My favorite response is busy doing what? Because it's become this badge of honor, hasn't it? Busy.
Oh, absolutely.
Or this automatic thing. Or then you have someone else. I had a colleague of mine who used to say, "How you going? Good." So he'd answer his own question. An habitual autopilot.
Yeah. How you going? Good. with no pause for you to get a chance to answer.
Not a chance. Instead of a conscious, you know, there's something about, and this is what I'm encouraged in the world today, Alan, because although the world's got a lot of troubles, there's also an increase in consciousness like never before. More and more people are awake. I'm finding there's people confusing awake with woke, which is another conversation. But a lot more people are awake and conscious, and I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by that.
I must confess, I'm a big fan of exploration and experimentation, and I'm concerned, to use your term, of change fatigue. I've been using the word crisis fatigued to describe the COVID dynamic. However, in the first year, I thought most people were in a state of shock, and they were in a moment of inertia. It was almost like they couldn't move. They were almost frozen in space, and they were living life almost robotically, I thought. And people are coming out of that state of shock. And as you do when you're coming out of shock, you're looking. As you gain consciousness, you're looking.
Yeah.
And I'm finding more and more people looking and searching. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm excited by that fact.
Yeah.
I'm also a little worried by it.
Right.
Because what kind of reflection has there been? I mean, I know myself, my world hasn't changed at all, because I've been in this room for a long time, and I haven't been doing outside work for some time. So I got used to this online space. So being forced to go online wasn't an issue for me. So my life hasn't been affected by COVID at all, except from a family point of view.
Yes.
Where my kids and grandkids are in different states.
Yes.
So we only just, we had a holiday with my son and daughter-in-law just last week. But that's the first time we've seen each other in more than 2 years.
Wow.
Now, thankfully, we've got the kind of relationship where we picked up in person where we left off last time. But I'm sensing that there are a lot of folk who haven't taken the opportunity of being locked down or locked up, terrible expressions, all of them, but that's the reality, haven't used the time productively to reimagine their lives.
Yes.
And so they're coming out a bit, well, what do we do now?
Yes.
So that's both in a way disappointing, but in another way understandable. Because I think we all know what it's like to get on the treadmill of life and not really stop and think about things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's another thing too that I think is critical to these continuous conversations, is we allow moments to stop and reflect. Which is why silence is so important. It's okay to sit in a room with people you have good relationships with and no one needs to say anything. And it doesn't matter how long that silence goes on.
Yeah.
But most people are not comfortable with that, of course.
Yeah.
So, Allan, I'm wondering if we might end this conversation from a recording point of view and then pick it up again very soon.
Yeah, I would love to.
But I thought maybe some close off sort of on this one.
I've got some really lovely takeouts. And it's your first chart, if I can move over here out the way. Your first chart of get clear what the purpose is. And I loved the fact that you identified the importance of the purpose of a check-in meeting is to support and you bring to account.
Yep.
Provide the opportunity for accounting to be taking place.
Yes.
And then the importance of being human during the process. And then all your seeds, you're candid, you're convivial, you're conscious, you're compassionate, and you compel them. That's what I call a real sea change. And your storytelling obviously is one of your trademarks, which is such an important factor. I love your honesty, your vulnerability, and your accountability, and the emphasis on the relationship. And the two really lovely ones are the importance of check-in conversations. And what we've just touched on, and I would suggest we might even pick up in our next session, is the reflective conversation.
Yes.
How do we support each other when we're coming out of something and we're looking and going, where am I? What's going on? How can we have those conversations that are really rich and exploratory? And yeah, that would be my keys that I take out that are very important.
I had a wonderful little flash then about, because I'm down this rabbit hole about what are different words for change and accountability. But I also had the flash of, it's the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole.
Yes.
That I've fallen in, because it's full of wonder. And that's really what your little chart of the inner, we've massively overcomplicated so many things, as you mentioned about strategy. Yeah. Really, what people are searching for is a how.
Yes.
But it's the connection to the what and the relationships that I think that's where the journey is, and it leads to this outer having our needs met. I'm both enthralled and intrigued by that process. So I think we'll end the recording for now, but we'll see you again very soon.
Very much look forward to the next iteration.
Indeed.
Been a pleasure, Ian, to be with you. Take great care.